Imagine you go to sleep on a Monday night, and there is an empty plot of land outside your window. Cleared ground, maybe some foundation work, nothing else. You wake up Friday morning and there is a 16-story residential building standing there. 150 fully finished apartments. Tiles on every floor, toilets installed, lights working, hot water running. Move-in ready. That sentence does not describe a hypothetical. It describes something that physically happened in Abu Dhabi in late 2025. A building called Earth Tower went from first crane lift to completed structure in 96 hours. And the company that built it is not a startup with a flashy pitch deck. It is a Chinese manufacturer that has been quietly perfecting this process for 15 years while the rest of the construction world told them it could not be done at scale. The company is called Broad Group, and what they have built is not just a faster way to construct apartments. It is a fundamental reimagining of what construction actually is. To understand where Broad is today, you need to go back to where they started. Because the gap between then and now tells you everything about how seriously to take what they are doing. In 2011, Broad assembled a 30-story hotel in 15 days. The building went up in Changsha, in central China, using prefabricated sections that were manufactured off-site, transported to the location, and bolted together with a precision that looked, on video, like someone had hit fast forward on the whole process. The interior was not a shell waiting to be fitted out. Insulation was already in the walls. Plumbing was already run. Air conditioning was already installed. The finishing work had been done in the factory, not on the site. The global construction industry watched the time-lapse footage and reached for familiar responses. It was called a publicity stunt. Questions were raised about structural integrity. People argued that speed and quality were fundamentally incompatible in construction, that cutting timelines that dramatically meant cutting corners somewhere. Broad kept building. 3 years after the 30-story hotel, they completed Mini Sky City, a 57-story tower standing over 200 meters tall, assembled in 19 days at a rate of roughly 3 floors per day, 800 apartments. Working space for several thousand people. The same modular system, simply applied at greater height. At that point, the conversation shifted from whether the buildings could go up quickly to whether they were actually safe to live in. Broad had anticipated this. Their structural system uses a steel frame architecture with a tolerance for seismic activity that meets and in some specifications exceeds conventional high-rise construction standards. The speed was not achieved by weakening the structure. It was achieved by moving as much work as possible off the construction site and into a controlled factory environment where consistency is higher and quality control is easier to maintain. Then came the number that started to genuinely unsettle people. A 10-story apartment building, assembled in 28 hours and 45 minutes, not days, hours, 3 cranes, 1 continuous working period, and a building that would have occupied a conventional construction crew for 6 to 8 months was standing before the second day was done. The industry did not really have a framework for processing that figure. It sat outside the range of what the existing mental model of construction could accommodate. Here is the thing that most coverage of Broad gets wrong by omission. The speed you see on the construction site is not where the innovation lives. The construction site is almost beside the point. The actual work happens in Broad's manufacturing facility in central China, and it operates nothing like a construction company. It operates like a car factory. Each module that goes into a Broad building is produced on a robotic assembly line. The module itself is roughly the dimensions of a standard shipping container, a self-contained segment of a finished apartment. By the time it reaches the end of the production line, it is approximately 90% complete. The floor tiles are laid. The bathroom fixtures are installed. The electrical wiring is run through conduits. The plumbing connections are made. The insulation is fitted. The walls are painted. The windows are in. Everything that takes months on a conventional construction site has already been completed in the factory under controlled conditions, with robotic systems maintaining tolerances that human workers in outdoor environments cannot consistently match. When those modules arrive at a construction site, the process that follows is not construction in any traditional sense. It is assembly. Cranes lift each module into its designated position. Workers make the structural connections between modules, bolting the steel frame elements together according to specifications. Crews connect the interface points where plumbing, electrical, and mechanical systems from adjacent modules meet. Then the next module goes up. The construction site becomes a logistics operation rather than a manufacturing operation. And logistics can be optimized for speed in ways that on-site construction fundamentally cannot. Broad's factory currently produces an output equivalent to roughly 84,000 housing units per year. A single facility. That figure is not about individual impressive projects, it is about what happens when you treat housing the way the automotive industry treats vehicles. You design a system, build a factory around the system, and the output scales with production capacity rather than with the availability of skilled construction labor at a specific location. Everything Broad had demonstrated in China up to 2024 could be, and was, filed away by much of the international construction industry as locally specific. A Chinese company doing impressive things in China, within Chinese regulatory frameworks, using Chinese labor, for Chinese clients. Interesting. Not necessarily transferable. Earth Tower ended that argument. Eagle Hills, a property development company connected to Emaar, the group responsible for building the Burj Khalifa, sent executives to Broad's factory in central China. They walked the production floor. They watched the robotic assembly lines produce finished apartment modules. They reviewed the structural specifications. Then they placed a commercial order for 259 modules, comprising 150 residential units across multiple apartment configurations. This was not a pilot program or a research collaboration. It was a transaction. One of the most credentialed property development organizations in the world, with the technical knowledge to evaluate what they were looking at, decided the technology was ready for the Gulf market and wrote a purchase order. The modules were manufactured in September 2025. Broad's production team completed the entire order in 30 days. The units were loaded onto cargo ships in October and transported 6,000 kilometers across the ocean to the UAE. They arrived in Abu Dhabi later that month. From the moment the first crane lifted the first module on site, the clock ran for 96 hours. When it stopped, Earth Tower was standing. 16 stories, 150 apartments, 168,000 square feet of residential space. Every unit finished and operational. The project carried a value of 125 million RMB and became the first Chinese prefabricated residential building delivered into the Middle Eastern market. At CES 2026, it received the Speed Award for Smart Living, a prize that had never previously gone to a construction project, because construction projects had never previously moved at a pace that warranted the category. That last detail is worth sitting with. An industry award typically given to consumer electronics went to a building. The implication is that what Broad is doing has more in common with product manufacturing than with construction as the industry has historically understood it. Broad's next move is more significant than any single building they have assembled. The company is working toward establishing full manufacturing facilities in the UAE, not shipping modules from China, but replicating the production system itself on the ground in the Middle East. The distinction matters enormously. Shipping finished modules across oceans works, as Earth Tower demonstrated, but it adds freight cost and transit time that a local production facility eliminates entirely. If you can manufacture the modules where the demand is, you remove the ocean from the equation and the economics improve substantially. Broad's stated production target is 70 manufacturing facilities operating globally by 2030, with a combined annual output of 200 million square meters of buildings. That number is not presented as aspiration, it is presented as the production plan. The Abu Dhabi project was not the destination, it was the proof of concept that unlocks the expansion. Broad is not operating in isolation. The broader signal from the Chinese construction sector is consistent and pointed in the same direction. CSCEC, the China State Construction Engineering Corporation, currently the largest construction company on Earth by annual revenue, has received initial regulatory approval in Dubai for its modular construction division, operating under the brand name Homagic. The approval covers low-rise and mid-rise residential construction, and the company has set a target of 50,000 housing units per year specifically for markets connected to the Belt and Road Initiative. 50,000 units per year from a single company's modular division, deployed into markets that have been struggling to build housing fast enough using conventional methods for years. Dubai's approval of CSCEC's approach is a regulatory signal. When governments begin formally approving the framework conditions for modular construction from Chinese providers, the barrier shifts from technical capability to market access. And market access, once the regulatory pathway exists, tends to open quickly. The numbers confirm the trajectory. In 2025, China exported the equivalent of $4.34 billion worth of prefabricated building structures internationally. That figure represents a 42% increase in exports to Gulf markets compared to the previous year. The growth rate is not slowing. Both the supply side and the demand side are accelerating simultaneously. Construction has been, for most of human history, a craft industry. Buildings were made by skilled workers assembling materials on site, in variable weather, with variable quality outcomes, at timelines that have not fundamentally changed in decades despite improvements in equipment and materials. Every other major manufacturing sector has already undergone the transition from craft production to industrial production. Automobiles made the shift over a century ago. Consumer electronics made it 50 years ago. Clothing, furniture, appliances, all of them moved from hand-built to factory-built at some point in the 20th century. And in each case, the result was the same. Output increased dramatically, costs fell, and access expanded to populations that previously could not afford the product. Housing has resisted this shift longer than any other sector, partly because of the regulatory complexity of building codes, partly because of the deeply local nature of construction labor markets, and partly because the industry's culture has been slow to accept that a building can be treated as a manufactured product. Broad and CSCEC are not arguing this point anymore. They are simply doing it, at scale, in markets far outside China, with commercial clients who have evaluated the technology and decided it is ready. The 30-story hotel in 2011 was version 1 of a system that is now on perhaps version 8 or 9, deployed internationally, validated by credentialed buyers, and backed by a production infrastructure that treats housing the way Toyota treats the Corolla. What I find genuinely fascinating about this story is not the 96 hours. The headline number is striking, but the deeper point is about what happens to housing affordability when you apply industrial production logic to residential construction. If a factory can produce 84,000 housing units a year, and the economics of modular construction continue to improve as the system scales, the cost floor for residential construction drops in a way that nothing else currently on the horizon can match. That has implications for housing markets in the Gulf, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, and eventually in Western cities where construction costs have made affordable housing effectively impossible to deliver at the required pace. The construction industry has had a century of warning that this transition was coming. It is here now, and the company leading it is operating out of central China, not out of London or New York or Tokyo. Here is my question for you. If a broad-built apartment was available in your city, fully finished, structurally certified, assembled in under a week, would you buy or rent one? Or does the speed of construction make you nervous regardless of what the data says about quality? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I think the responses are going to split pretty sharply, and I want to see where people land. If you want to keep following stories like this, technology and engineering developments that are reshaping industries most people are not paying close enough attention to, subscribe to Eastern Engine and turn on notifications. We cover these shifts as they happen, with the depth they deserve. There is a lot more coming, and you do not want to be catching up later.